Join our knowledgeable hosts as they dive into the captivating universe of comic books, movies, TV shows, and pop culture. Get ready for vibrant discussions and a shared enthusiasm for all things superhero and beyond. A comic podcast straight from the panels. This is Beyond the Capes.
All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Cape, part of the Uncensored Nerds Network. With us today, Daniel Hillyard, illustrator, co-creator. You might have seen his work, Plastic, and we are here to discuss I Was a Fashion School Serial Killer. Big hit coming up, I know it. I've talked to them about it. We're happy to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having me. Thanks.
All right, so as we like to ask every creator who comes on the show, of all the million things that have evolved in this world, and you could have opened a store, you could have been a farmer, you could have picked any other career, why do we all seem to gravitate towards comic books, knowing it's a field that will break our hearts?
I'm sure there's like a deep philosophical answer in there, aside from the idea of me working on a farm. I really wouldn't like that. I think it's just because it's cool. You know, it's cool stuff. It's the inner kid in me that liked to draw in on textbooks and stuff and just have crazy things and would love heavy metal album covers, you know, and stuff like that. It's just for that reason. It's cool.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. It's plain and simple, especially at the end of the day when you have like your floppy of like your number one issue and like your name's right there, and it's a crazy cover. I mean, Plastic has had some of the most memorable covers, and just seeing like that product has to be incredible.
It really was so bizarre to like get it through, because I'm not in the States, I'm in Spain, and so it takes me a little while. Sometimes I get the rest of the guys will get the books just before they're coming out, and I sort of like get to see them ahead of time. I'm usually getting mine around the time that everybody else is getting them in the store. And that, like, getting the first issue of something and seeing my name in print on something, and like also getting to have like really, really good people doing cover art. The first book I worked on was called Anti with 12 gauge, and that had covers by Brian Stelfreeze. And it was just awesome to see that like Brian Stelfreeze was doing a cover for a book that I was drawing. It was something I didn't think that like I'd get to see, let alone straight out of the gate, you know.
Definitely. I mean, and now we're here. You got some amazing covers coming out that we'll cover. Now, in terms of drawing, I mean, and illustrating, has this always been like, even as a kid, you were one of those kids give you crayons, paper, colored pencils, and you were just occupied for hours?
Oh yeah, that was absolutely me. I was either drawing stuff everywhere, or I was just like playing with random Legos. Not like the full sets that people get today. Like I was saying to yeah, like I was saying to Doug about, in England we have this thing called car boot sales, which is kind of like it's just basically a field where everybody shows up, you pay to go in, and you load your car with all your stuff, kind of like a yard sale, except you don't have it in your yard, you go to a field somewhere with everybody else. And that's kind of like where I would get that stuff. It's also where I picked up my first comic book as well.
Awesome. Do you remember what that comic book was?
Yes, I do. It was a huge box of Alien and Predator comics and Alien versus Predator. I was a fan of those. Probably at that age, I shouldn't have been a fan of that stuff, but I really, you know, I grew up around that time, like 80s, 90s kid, and watching gratuitous gore and action movies when you were far too young to do so was definitely a part of the growing up experience, I think, for people of my generation. And so I was just obsessed with those. And then as soon as I saw them, like this these big boxes. I was with another friend at the time, and like he got one box and I got another box. And I remember seeing like the box with his books in it and being a little jealous of some of the like covers and stuff, because I was literally judging a book by its cover. But then I found out like I had these Alien and Predator ones in the box that I picked up, and I was blown away as a kid that liked drawing anyway, and then taking some of my favorite stuff and just seeing someone else do, like, again, they were just cool. It's just cool pictures. It's just cool, awesome pictures of these badass monsters doing crazy stuff and cutting people up and stuff. And I was just fascinated from there.
Yeah, no, and everything you said perfectly describes, especially when being a 90s kid myself, my fascination with Tales from the Crypt, uh, Final Destination, Saw. I'm even now in the medical field, being in surgery day to day. There's something in that generation that we are just, it's like keyed into us, which is funny because I talked to Doug a while back about panels. He's like, "Oh, that's so cool. Just please don't ever mention needles to me. I'll pass out. It's not for me," which is really funny because your guys' work. I was like, I wonder if he just reads like the panel sometimes and just passes out in the chair.
It's the bizarrest thing, you know. I mean, first jumping back, Tales from the Crypt, brilliant. I remember I was watching that as the movies, the Demon Knight one, and the show. Before I knew that it was from a comic book, but I'd never seen any of the books. And then when they started, like binding them again in the hardbound editions, and I was seeing them in stores, I was completely blown away. I love them. But yeah, it's really strange. It's like I used to be okay with all that sort of like violence and stuff, and when it's over the top, it's okay for me. When it's small things, I can't deal with it. Like all the violence in the comic books and stuff, when it's just like it's over the top, it's kind of like it's like the Sam Raimi school of violence. I can kind of deal with that. But when it's like somebody that's like if it's like a horror movie or thriller, and the guy starts shaving, then I'm suddenly very tense. Like the idea of a single little cut on the neck somehow completely will freak me out. But like the idea of somebody like getting their head chopped off and like fountains of blood spraying everywhere just does nothing.
Yeah, it's funny. It's a disconnect because you can almost tell that it's real, but everyone remembers that Saw scene where the lady gets pushed into the pit full of syringes, and everyone just. I still to that day that bothers me the most. I've seen some crazy stuff, and that haunts me more than anything.
Yeah, I gotta admit, even thinking, I'd completely forgotten about that scene, and even just like thinking about it now, it's making me feel like sit a little more uncomfortable. If you know, I kind of tense up a little bit. You can almost feel it.
Yeah, you 100% can feel it all over. All right, well, everyone, the comic might have a change of storyline coming up after this talk.
Sorry, you cut out there for a sec.
I was about to say, after that new scene, your comic storyline, you might have a little change of heart. You might have to talk to Doug, be like, "Yeah, a new trauma was unlocked. We might have to revamp the storyline."
You never know. They all make their way in there eventually.
Exactly. With drawing, and as a kid, obviously, you get to a point where you start to realize like this is something I really want to do with my life. This is kind of the career. At what point did you decide I want to be an artist professionally? Did you pursue school afterwards, or did you immediately just start making portfolios and kind of going to the companies?
I did kind of pursue school after. I did art and things at like a regular secondary school, and then when I went on to college and further learning after that, I did pursue it, but I was overall a little bit disappointed with the experience, I gotta say. It's like when I was a kid, I I come from like a family where we all had, like, my parents were always working. Like my dad was an auto body repairman, and he would be on call as well sometimes to go and pick up car wrecks and things and take them back to the garage at all hours. And mum used to clean. She used to clean at school, that I went to. So after school, when everybody went home, I would like stay and help clean and set up for some of the after school activities and things. So like the idea of working was always something that I was very aware of as a kid growing up. It was kind of one of those like facts of life that I don't know if it's normal to be aware of at that age, that you grow up and you have to work for a living. But after that, I sort of like, I never really thought that art was possible as a career. It was just something that I really liked to do. And like we were saying before, I could just like lose myself for hours drawing, and I just loved doing it. Even in places that I wasn't supposed to be doing it, like on the walls and on furniture and stuff like that. I really was an awful kid. And then one day I remember I saw like a this making of documentary for a Disney animated film that was coming out at the time. I think it was The Hunchback of Notre Dame or something. And I remember seeing somebody, like you see the thing where they've got the paper and they're just flipping through the pages and they're sketching it out and they're making it move. And that's when it suddenly occurred to me that drawing in the way that I like to draw, because I kind of got that artists like painters and stuff like that could make a living, but I never thought like the kind of sketching that I like to do was something that was a job until I'd seen that. And then it suddenly clicked that you could draw for a living. That could be your work. I was like, everyone's got to work. You need a job unless you like win the lottery or something. And I love to draw. And I was like, well, if I'm going to have a job, I might as well do something I really like. And then not long after that, I picked up comic books and I was like, oh, wait, this is a thing as well. And then my love for it just went from there. But I went to school, and I remember I did like a general art course first for, I think it was 3 years. And then after that, I had the option of moving on. I went to do graphic design, because in graphic design, they had one of the syllabuses, and it was for storyboarding. And I thought, oh, okay, this is brilliant. This is what I would love to learn. And then, as a matter of fact, it was a very small section that wasn't very in depth at all. I was overall kind of disappointed in the experience, and I came away from college having drawn a lot and probably learning more than I would recognize now, like in terms of art, but not coming away with a portfolio that I could use, you know. And then it was just all personal time, trying to build something up to try and get a job in comics, but then ultimately being terrified to send stuff off, you know. So I couldn't travel to the States because it was too expensive for me then, because I'd always heard that you sort of like the regular formula, like you turn up with your portfolio, you know, and you go to like a convention, and then you stand in line with a bunch of people, and you walk up to an editor and you hope that they like your stuff or they give you feedback or something, and then you kind of go away. But then I found out that there were places that would accept submissions unsolicited, like online. So I looked around until I found like places that I liked the work that they were doing, and finally sent off some stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and here we are. I mean, it obviously worked out for you. The craziest thing about your story is my dad cleaned schools, and my mom used to work all the time. My mom used to work all the time. Would have to go and call because she was in the medical field as a PA for a hospital. So like every kid was, you know, leaving school to go do activities. I would be at the hospital doing like little, like trying to occupy myself, reading, or doing like running stuff around. We pretty much had the same childhood, which is insane. Yeah. But I think it's critical when I look back to it. I had all that time to read myself, and man, graphic novels just an onslaught. And I think that having that time to really develop, what you like is critical. And obviously for you, the more drawing you can do is always the better. I know everyone probably always asks you or has asked you before, like, yo, do you have any tips or anything? And everyone hates to hear draw more or write more. They hate to hear it so much, but
Yeah.
I don't know how sometimes to tell anyone like it really is that simple. When you're trying to build up your
Honestly, it is. And you know what? It's so difficult when you're trying to get your start as well, because if you're just trying to get your start, and we're having the kind of life like our parents did, and we're working all the time. Like, what time do you have to draw? Luckily, like the thing is, once you do get your foot in the door and you start doing it as a job, then basically your job becomes your learning experience. Like, you get better at it because you're spending hours and hours drawing it, especially if you're drawing like if you're working on the same book and you're doing the same characters. Like, you might start off and not be able to draw Batman very well, but if you're doing Batman for like 4 years or more, you're going to get really good at drawing Batman by the end of that, it is one of those things, but it is just practice.
yeah.
That
So
being
everyone
said, I'm
listening,
always
just fight
open to
with.
offering tips.
Yeah, I mean, a tip is great. If you have, if I always say, if you know like a better style like pencil or grip or drawing on this paper, it's always great to hear that. But at the end of the day, you could buy $2,000 of the best supplies in the world. If you don't touch them, it's not going to make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's probably like one of the hardest hurdles at the very start is feeling like there is um, a price of admission to getting into it.
Yeah.
Like thinking that you need X tool or you need X pencil, or if you're working digitally, you need this type of tablet or this type of Cintiq, or this program or that program. And obviously there are some slight differences with things, especially when it comes to the digital stuff. But mostly it is just that thing that everybody hates to hear.
Yep. Yeah, it's just hours. Now, obviously, in this journey, so you finally found that you can get into comic books. You start getting some of this early work done. Coming out of kind of the school background and learning some basics of art, but now you're ready to transition your skills to what you love. What was the hardest part about making that kind of transition? Because obviously you've been drawing a lot as a kid, so, and I'm assuming it was comic book inspired to a degree, so you have an understanding of what you want to do for the art for the comic book.
Sorry, it cut out a little. It cut out a little bit again. Everybody's going to hate hearing me say that. It cut out a little bit again. I got coming out of learning and then transitioning to.
Yeah, you were coming out of school and like you're beginning comic books. What was like the hard part of kind of getting into like the actual professional mindset of, all right, this is what I now have to do for comic books? Was it hard to make that adjustment?
It was and it wasn't for different kind of reasons. How it wasn't was because going all through like college, even though I was doing art and taking drawing class and I was doing lots of design stuff, like working with fonts and stuff a lot, I also spent an incredible amount of my free time still doodling in between. And a lot of the stuff that I did was basically comic book and manga inspired, I think that's another thing for people of that age. Everybody drew Dragon Ball at one time. And so that kind of transition wasn't so big because I'd already been doing it a lot. The harder thing, I think, was really worrying about things being perfect straight out the gate.
Yeah.
I think that was definitely the hardest thing. It would I think for my first book, it's sort of like it took way longer than I do now, just because I would not really procrastinate because I was still doing stuff, but I would revisit things constantly. I would be worried that it wasn't quite good enough, or like it wasn't quite what I had in my mind's eye. And then I was still also just starting. I was trying to find like a process, and I went through a couple of different ways of making a comic book page. I went from like drawing and scanning or photographing, and then trying to ink or drawing on digitally, and then trying to ink by hand, and then scanning, and it was like just trying to figure out what making a comic book, the kind of process was for me. And I think that's the hard thing with tips as well, because everybody is different. Now we all like gravitate towards different things. We enjoy different parts of comic books. Some people will really like sketching digitally because they can like go through as many copies as whatever, and they don't have to worry about using paper. But then they might really like the idea of inking traditionally, so their setup will be very different for somebody who does that the other way around, or for someone who works completely traditionally or completely digitally. But yeah, I think that was probably the hardest bit, was trying to throw away this idea of perfection and just making sure that you do your best at the time, but then be okay with letting it go and just saying, okay, next time, if there's something wrong with it, instead of going back, I just say, next time I'll try and do it better. And when I say something wrong, I don't mean like that there's something disastrously wrong, because an editor will tell you to change it. But like if it's just your own artistic preference, you're just like, oh, I really hate how like I draw hands here or something like that. It's just like, I'll do it better next time.
Yeah, it's funny you say hands, because the couple people that I have talked to as illustrators, they're always like, "Oh man," I look at like my hands. I was like, I could have made that middle finger or that knuckle just a little bit straighter, a little bit more pronounced. And like the page looks beautiful, but they're like, "Man, that fist, it's 2% off, and I'm always gonna look at that fist."
It's so funny how you can get hyper focused on something, and I think it's kind of like human nature. We can get hyper focused on lots of things, like everything. Like, say for instance, your house might be immaculate, but there might be like one piece of furniture that, or like that's got a chip in it or something. No one else will notice it, but you'll know it's there, and it will continue to bug you forever. You know, it's just one of those things. But then
Exactly.
I also the funny thing is that I also see like if there's something that I hated before about a piece, and then like if enough time has passed, I can go back to it and I might forget all about it, and then actually just be able to enjoy it.
Yeah, I think that's the good thing. I think it's really great too when you have so many pieces to kind of look at, where you can go back and really see the transition. Which for you, I mean, you got a lot of early work, and we moved through, and that brings us to the whole reason we're here, and that was your new work coming out. I Was a Fashion School Serial Killer.
Yeah, that's coming out on the 2nd of April. And I'm really looking forward to that. I haven't actually got a copy of it in hand yet. Obviously, it's way too early, but I'm really looking forward to getting a copy of that in hand as well.
Yeah, we've been hyping it up. Beneath the Trees was a big one last year, and I was really happy that a lot more horror books came out. So when this came out, I was very excited, because I think this is going to be the big hit of the summer, coming up for comics. For everyone listening that may not be familiar, or who may have seen something about it, how would you describe, what's the story about?
The story is about it's kind of a coming of age and friendship story with a serial killer thrown in. It's about this young woman who wants to. She recognizes that she is a serial killer. I mean, she's pretty proficient at it at this point, but she has an eye for design and fashion, and she goes into a fashion school, hoping that she can become more than just a serial killer. She's hoping that she can sort of channel some of her stuff and be a little bit more exploring of her creative side. But the twist is that everything that she makes entirely out of people.
Yeah, I
And
think
I mean
and the
everything.
cover. If you haven't seen the covers, everyone go to his page and Doug's page. You'll see the covers beautifully. I think Doug dropped some panels. I think one of the best thing about your guys' stories and your co-creation efforts, even with plastic, um, was how dark of a story you make, especially in plastic. It's very dark. It's very violent, but you really do a good job at like humanizing the person, where you really feel for the main character.
I'm glad it comes through, because I mean that was one of the challenges. Like when we first, so like obviously when we first started getting into this, finding our groove with the horror comedy comics, we and the stories that we were doing. One of the hardest things coming out of it was trying to make a character that's so dark be appealing to people. Because obviously, if they're just terrible all the time, then you're not really going to want to stick around and get to know them. So we try and do that. Try and find ways to make them at least understandable. They don't just kill people for no reason. There is usually, even if the reason is complete insanity, there is a method to it. I think that's kind of like the rule for me. That's the rules that make a good killer. Well, to some degrees. Obviously, oh no, actually, I was sorry. My mind went on a tangent there. It went to like Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees, and I was
Yeah,
like, do they really have? They seem mindless, but no, Michael and Jason, they both have reasons.
yeah,
But I was thinking like Hannibal Lecter, he seems to kill people that he thinks are rude, at least in the movies, anyway. I mean,
yeah, definitely. No, I mean, I think that definitely helps the story, and I think it really shines through. Um, Now it's funny we were talking about illustrating anatomy and hands and whatnot. Was there a challenge with doing this, knowing that you're making a serial killer that is going to make fashion out of people, and you were going to have to come up with a way to actually illustrate like a coat? Did you ever get at some point you're like, man, we just got to lay off the faces for this part of this death. Let's just focus on a different body part because I don't want to draw it anymore.
I'll tell you actually, like the some of the some of the when it comes to like the anatomy stuff, the most challenging thing is is when you need to draw. I think I posted like a quick video thing recently, and it was like a sketch of somebody where they kind of get half like a slice through their head, and like the head comes apart. And some of the stuff trying to find references for what it looks like when you have a slice, like what the inside of that looks like, I would say normally would be extremely daunting, but there is so much reference on the internet that you'd sometimes be surprised at what you could find. Like the amount of the stuff that they have on like medical charts and things for this stuff is so expansive that it made it didn't make it as difficult as I thought it was going to be. It made it more fun. Drawing that kind of stuff is fun for me. The hard bit was drawing fashion, like getting to grips with different styles, different clothes, and stuff like that. I mean, I I don't really have that much of a clue about any of that. Actually, when it came to looking at some of the fashion, like my wife was helping me out. We were going on Pinterest, like picking outfits and stuff for the different characters, like trying to come up with the kind of vibe that they might give off and be like, oh, like this kind of thing would suit this person.
Yeah, no, I can't imagine that was difficult. And references for sure. I know I've done some consulting with a minor movie, and they're like, "Oh, we want to do this surgery table setup." I said, first of all, you got the wrong instruments. Those are not what are used. I said, let me show you exactly what I'm looking at here. This is exactly what it does. But yeah, it's crazy. I mean, you can Google anything now, and there's probably a video and or diagram showing exactly what you need. Now, in terms of the fashion and drawing that incorporating it all, at what point did you guys make a decision like, let's start small, and then obviously she's in school and we start getting to like maybe like a first walkway type thing, we're gonna almost kind of build up the fashion as well to like a grand finale, to where like the most exquisite pieces are at the end of the series.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of baked into the story, to be honest, because she sort of works her way up through it, and then obviously at the climax is where she has more of her style changes the most. But for me, working through, and we have different characters who have different types of styles. Some might be a little bit more subdued, and some might be very flamboyant. There's the teacher who's instructing the class is much more flamboyant with her style, whereas the protagonist of the book, Renee, she's a lot more withdrawn. So she has kind of like this. She has a style that's a lot more guarded, and she starts off very sort of like everything's all quite closed and dark, and everything about her sort of like says, I don't want to talk to anybody. Don't get to know me. We're not going to be friends. Sorry, I've just recently had a cold. And she actually does eventually start to warm up and make relationships with the people closest to her. Her style sort of starts to change. She starts to open up a little bit more, and she becomes less guarded, a little bit more outgoing. It's reflected in her personality, but also in her style.
Yeah, I would say in the panels that I saw that Doug had posted, even in the first few panels that he was able to release, I think it was in the alleyway, she didn't really want to kill. I mean, she at some point was talking like, I'm late, I gotta go, I really don't have time for this, but I guess I'll make an exception. I mean, again, as we were talking, I mean, that's what makes the character, it's so good to read, because you have a serial killer who just really wants to be a fashion mogul and wants to make her name. And if, a few people happen to fall by the wayside, she's going to limit herself, but she's not above it.
Yeah, she's accepting of who she is, but she's also trying to change, She's not like lamenting over her being a serial killer and wishes that she wasn't kind of deal. She's confident in who she is, but she also wants to see if she can better herself as well,
Definitely. Now, when making this story and kind of creating this world, was it one of those things where you look at like shows like Dexter or even Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and you kind of look at like, all right, they really did this part well, but this is where our story is going to be different, because I think this could have been better because they were limited by TV show production or money, where I can draw whatever I feel like. Was there any of that kind of went into the process?
I don't know if there was really. I can't think that there was really any sort of like show or film that kind of inspired any of the death scenes. I think usually what it comes to is what we think we can get away with, and also, like you're saying, like we definitely have things that they shouldn't work. And if you were to see it in a movie setting, I think it would definitely have to be adjusted to make sense. Like, because there are some things that just, like I say, the kind of school of horror that I go for is very much the Sam Raimi over the top. It's whereas someone would get like a knife and it would just like slice across the neck and a bit of blood come off. We're very much the knife slices the head, like the blood comes out, the head rolls off and detaches, and then more blood comes out. Kind of, it's very over the top and kind of slapstick. It's absolutely disgusting, but it's also really cartoony at the same time. And I think that kind of style allows us to really push some things. You know, I don't know. I'm trying to think. I'm not sure if I could say this, but there is one point in a book where someone kind of like they get exploded from the inside, and it's like it's in a way that really I don't think anyone could physically make happen, but it happens, you know.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, and that's the beautiful thing I think about this story, and it's nice too. I think that you and Doug are coming back and doing another story because this feels like a partnership that just it works so well. I think the way you guys color it, the way you draw it, his writing, your co-creation of like everything about it just kind of gels together. Is this when you make these stories, is this something you want to like if you guys were to keep doing projects, keep making new original stories? Or at some point have you ever talked about, well, if we got 3 stories, we could kind of do a shared universe or start hinting at other characters in our next stories?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, like, so with plastic and vinyl, our previous books. First, like Doug's amazing. He's like my best friend, my partner in crime, perfect partner in crime with this stuff. And we're constantly finding ways and excuses to never stop working together. So as we finish from one to the next, we found this gear. When we did plastic, we found this gear, like this horror comedy thing. We both really vibe it and are really enjoying doing these stories and playing with these kind of characters. So definitely like we like sticking in that kind of vibe, that kind of wheelhouse is definitely where we are at the moment. I mean, may it change in the future? Maybe. Who knows? But at the moment, we're really, really happy there. But with plastic and vinyl, I mean, they are shared and plush as
Yeah,
well. It's all part of this. Like, I think we call it either the plastic verse or a materials verse. It's kind of like shared universe of serial killers. And there are little hints here and there for it, but it's never like an ongoing event where you have to read one to get another. We like our stories to be able to work so that you can jump in and you can enjoy a story without having read any of our other stuff. But then at the same time, if you have read some of the other stuff, you will get a name drop here or there will be a reference here and there. Like in Vinyl, at one point, one of the characters is talking and they're referencing something that happened with Edwin in Plastic. And then in Plush as well, when they're at this furry convention, there is a furry standing in the back with the blow up doll Virginia. It's Edwin, you know. So
yeah,
they're
that's awesome.
kind of in there.
Definitely. Well, we hope to see more of it. Last question before we get to where everyone can find you and get this ordered. Your covers for this issue are phenomenal. I like that there's not, number one, I really appreciate that there's not 25 different variant covers, which I know could be difficult. But I feel like the ones you guys have chosen are fairly iconic. What again was that your guys is like, let's pick this scene, let's get this artist, or did you just kind of be like, hey, this is the story, I think I would like you to do this cover? Because I immediately, when I first saw the covers, I was like, man, if they did like a Kill Bill scene where she's just standing with all like the blood and body parts on the dance floor, I would be all for that.
Oh, what as the cover?
Yeah.
Let me see. There are. I don't know, like a Kill Bill scene, but maybe there's something that I think there is a cover in there that feels a little Kill Billy. So you might be happy later on down the line and some issues further on, because obviously, I have that behind the scenes peek. I know what's coming. Because like all the books they're all done. basically finished. They're just finishing up some last lettering and stuff now. That's usually the way it works with Doug and I, is that we have everything pretty much almost done 100% before the first book comes out. So there's like, unless there's some sort of strike or something, there shouldn't be any delays with any of the stuff. But with the covers, we had some things in mind. We didn't, like you say, with when it's lots of variant covers, I think it can get a little bit, it can get distracting. I think it's good for collectors, but then beyond that, it can become a little daunting, I think. It's also a massive task to undertake for us as well. But we had an idea for like our regular covers. So that would be like the one that I did where she's sat at the table and she is at the sewing machine and she has all the faces stitched together into a dress. But then we also wanted to do something that incorporated elements of fashion. So we went to iconic fashion magazine covers to try and like riff on those a little bit. And those we had a couple picked out and they were mostly in the air for which order we were going to put them in, like which one was going to go for issue 1, 2, 3, up to 5 of this miniseries. But that all came later when we had our list of guest cover artists, because we had a list of people that we really wanted to see if they, first of all, wanted to, and then secondly, if they had time to jump on and do covers. And then based on that, it was very much letting them have room to play and do what they want to do for like the book. And then based on what we got back, then we would think about like what would partner well, like which fashion inspired cover would partner well with which artist for each issue, if that makes sense.
No, definitely. And I think, like I said, I think it worked out. I think if everyone goes and takes a look, the 3 covers that I've seen, I have the Janet Jackson one already pre-ordered. Nice. I might pick up the other one if they're available in the shop. I think it just works well. It gives you, again, there's a little bit of comedy in it, seeing these iconic covers brought to life, but there's that hint of horror, kind of grotesque body image that's just tucked away ever so faintly into it. That's what makes the story endearing.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, well, we'll certainly try. And with the Janet Jackson one, that one was the fun cover to do. And it turned out way better than I expected as well. Once all the text and stuff went on, to mimic the what is it, the issue of Vogue that it's from, or was the Janet Jackson from Rolling Stones? I'm terrible. I've completely forgotten.
It's one of them.
But yeah, I was really, really happy with that one. But there are a bunch in there that are some subtle, some not so much.
Perfect. Well, we look forward to seeing all the covers come out. So as we said, I Was a Fashion School Serial Killer, brought to you by Image Comics. We have a release date of April 2nd for issue number 1. Yes, and sir. I think we were talking FOC is coming up on March 10th.
Yes, that's right. Monday, March 10th.
All right, perfect. Well, we'll have those all linked for everyone listening. Those are your deadlines. Go to your LCS. Go get these stories in your shop. Tell them that this is what you want. Where is the best place for people to keep up with you? Because you and Doug are really good about dropping just like little bits on your guys' Instagram and social media about this story. And it's really nice to see because it gives you just enough to get you interested in the story.
Yeah. We have been really trying to up our game a little bit on that front, because I think before we would be so focused on doing the next book, we would leave it up to sort of, in this case, Image to do all of that stuff for us. But obviously we want to take the reins a little bit as well and try and like get into the community a bit more, and so like communicate with everybody and stores and things, and just try and get everybody back and interest in comics and going to their local store and picking up trades and stuff. But yeah, social media, definitely. I'm on Instagram mostly. You can follow me on Instagram. You can drop me a message on Instagram, say hi if you want. Doug as well is on Instagram. We share all our stuff backwards and forwards through there. And I think it automatically shares on Facebook as well, but I certainly see more of the messages on Instagram.
Definitely. All right. Well, we thank you for being on the show. We look forward to this coming out. Everyone listening, go to your LCS. Go ahead, get this book. You have some time left. March 10th. That's the FOC. We'll wait for April 2nd. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your story. Again, super excited for this. Everyone listening, this is going to be definitely one of the best comics of the year. I'm calling it right now. You're going to see it on a lot of people's lists. If you like listening to this episode and you want to listen to more, or some of our friends, the Comic-Con podcast, Plot Hole Productions, We Got Issues, Flynn's Gaming, and more, go to the Uncensored Nerds Network on Spotify. And if you would like to run an ad, you can check out our Patreon. And we look forward to seeing you guys watch this episode and more. Daniel, thank you for coming on, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks very much for having me, man. Thank you.
No problem. Everyone listening, have a good night.